Even though divorce may end the conflict a couple is having, it will not correct the attitudes or behaviors that brought about the conflict. Unless we correct the root problems, we will have the same conflicts in any future relationships.
Chance?
Don't call me by my government name. That's not even my government name, actually.
It's not.
It's not. Surprise. My name's not really Chance. But welcome back to the Next in Line podcast where, we're letting all the secrets out, you know?
So do you want me to put you on blast? I can say your government name.
Nah, we'll leave it alone. Yeah, y'all just know me by chance. Don't worry about it. We'll keep my name out of the system for a little bit. Keep me unassociated.
I don't even know if they know you by chance anymore. I think it's just more so slanted one.
Slanted one. Reverend slanted one, actually.
Yeah.
As I am an ordained minister now, sir. I'm actually trying to see if they'll update my work email signature to say Reverend Chance Pitts. Yeah. I don't know if they would, but it'd be worth a shot, right? I see all the other guys, all the professionals have their like so-and-so whatever, like all
CEO.
the letter designations, and they got all this like commas and extra letters and crap and acronyms for these different associations and programs they're certified in and things like that. Why not, man? Why not R-E-V dot Chance Pitts? Why can't I have it too, man?
You don't have freedom to just go in there and update it yourself?
No, IT holds all of our stuff down, dude.
Seriously?
Yeah.
I can update my signature to whatever I wanted.
Well, go get ordained and become Reverend Lane Divin.
I could just be Big Chief T.
You
signing off on my emails.
I wouldn't do anything. I'd just do Totanka, and I'd just find you a little picture of a buffalo and just stick it down there. Just a buffalo head is your signature.
Oof, that'd be hilarious.
Sign everything with an X as well, or a hoof print, like a buffalo hoof print.
I'll think about it.
You should. Speaking of hooves, Totanka got a gimpy hoof right now, doesn't he? Oh man, ladies and gentlemen, we're recording this on a Sunday. We've been doing our Sunday morning runs and our Saturday runs.
Saturday and Sundays, yeah.
And we've been running a lot of miles on the weekends together.
Yeah, man. I think it's the only time you do run is on the weekends.
Easy there. You might be right. But I decided...
I feel like it's pretty impressive, though, because my long run, I mean, they're not short runs. I mean, you're going out there busting out 17 miles, 19, stuff like that.
Yeah, just staying in shape.
Well, knock out my run for the week, get all mileage in one run.
Yeah, I've been putting up, honestly, 20-something miles just in the weekend and no miles during the week. So it's like, better get that figured out. But I did not go with you. You went out to Bandera this weekend.
I did, dude.
Did some exploration.
Yeah, I went out there, preparation for Cactus Rose coming up in October. And, dude, I was stoked to get out there. And, I don't know, like you hear so much about that race just in general and the trails out there and how technical it is.
Yes.
And it all holds true.
It holds true, okay.
Absolutely. I don't recall a percentage I told you the other day, but...
You said 80%.
Yeah,
roughly.
I think like 80% plus or minus a little bit. It's all like, at least on the section that I was on, anywhere from golf ball to like softball size rocks. Mm-hmm.
Reliving the Cocodona days around, was it Jerome? Yeah, Jerome.
Yeah, coming down the backside of the city spot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
so it's like that. It's just surrounded by mesquite and cactus and whatever else you have out there. So
yeah.
It's a good time, man. But anyways, super stoked to get out there, just experience what it's like. Had a 19-miler planned, and man, we get out there. I don't know, 6:30ish. Sun is just rising freaking beautiful out there.
I bet it was gorgeous out there in the Texas hill country.
Yeah, absolutely. And we had the entire place to ourselves. There was nobody else out there at that time. So
Really?
That's pretty dope. So we pull up to the trailhead, and like I have the race map downloaded on my phone, and so I'm able to see where like the start and finishes and stuff like that in different sections within the trail. But I was comparing that to like the trailhead and just trying to find a loop that I could do my 19-miler essentially and just break that up over 3 sections, what I was looking for. And luckily, there was a loop out there called the Spring Branch Trail, and it was like 6.5 miles per loop. So pretty much spot on, especially for what you're going to get on the trail side at least. And so we drove on down there, man, and after getting set up for about 5-10 minutes, dude took off down the trail. That's pretty solid.
Yeah?
Yeah.
It's good to hear. I was still sleeping at this point.
Yeah.
I was. I'd been worn out from a long week. Go ahead.
No, I mean, you had a lot going on this past week. I was just part of a snippet of it, and so I don't blame you.
Yeah, I took a little hiatus from our Saturday running.
Yeah.
But
so
how was those first few miles getting out there in uncharted territory and actually a longer run on trail, which is something that you haven't been able to get out to until now. So it was exciting for me to hear about you doing trail.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So that first loop, I was taking it easy. You know, I was going out there just being super deliberate in like foot placement and everything, and just paying attention to just the trail and the surroundings and my heart rate and everything else, just trying to just take it all in. For my long runs, I typically have speed work smack dab in the middle of it. And so my plan, first loop, go out there, just take it easy. Second loop, pick up the pace, obviously, and then just Cadillac it on that third loop back around again. First loop, man, I mean, of the 6.5 miles, the first 4, I mean, like I said, there's definitely spots where you had to pick and prod through it. I mean, you couldn't really go fast through it. But on the flip side of that, there's also some sections where those rocks would kind of peter out, and then you could definitely pick up the pace a little bit where you wanted to, right? And then I guess I'll give you the spoiler because I know that we're going to go out there. The last 2 miles, you go up this hill, and it's straight up an incline. For the first mile, and then straight down on the second.
Really?
Yeah, and so kind of brought back some memories of Cocodona in that regard. And I mean, really coming down, like there are some pretty steep sections where it's like you could. I mean, if you weren't paying attention, like you could definitely slide down probably that entire section.
Is it runnable at all? On the downhill, or
maybe, I mean, probably with somebody a lot more experienced than I am. There are sections that you could probably, like I said, like nickel and dime coming down a little bit, but it was pretty. At least the trail section that I chose to go down, it was pretty technical. So
okay.
And then you finally come out the base of it, and then you're able to go out on a trail for the last half mile of that loop essentially. And so that first loop of mine, you know, I was expecting like an hour and like 15 minutes or so. It ended up taking an hour and a half for that first section. So I mean, I wasn't moving fast, obviously.
Sure.
Did check in at the car. I had my wonderful wife just waiting for me out there.
Dang it, boy! Old crew chief Divin, the other crew chief.
And man, she was gracious enough. You know, we got a little bit of Starbucks on the way out there to appease her, and you know, she was rocking it, man. She's like, hey, I got my Starbucks, got some breakfast, got my iPad. I'm just gonna be chilling out there and just waiting for you to do your thing, right? And so
there you go.
did a quick check in, and then I turned back and I hit the trail pretty quick, man. There are sections where, you know, you're still having to hike through a little bit, but out there in Frederick, you know, there's been times where we are able to move downhill a little bit, and I've gotten a little bit more comfortable with that for sure.
Yeah, we were moving pretty good last time we were out to Frederick.
For sure.
Last side of that loop.
Yeah, for sure. And I remember us having conversation where, you know, either going up and you're having to kind of hike through some sections, or coming down, like you can find a rhythm, right? And you just fall into that rhythm. You're feeling pretty comfortable. Obviously, you're still aware of like your foot placement and everything, but you're just kind of like a free flow state almost too.
Yes. Yeah.
And I feel like I was definitely in that for those first 2 miles of that second loop. You know, I was going through, moving really well. I picked up the pace quite a bit. And, you know, I was going through, coming down a section, and that was a little bit steeper than I realized. But, I mean, I was just moving super comfortable. And my left foot planted on a rock that it definitely shouldn't have.
Okay. Oof.
And that sucker rolled and popped, and I just like smacked the trail pretty dang hard.
Damn it, dude.
And you know, it was I was like one of those moments where it's like everything is moving so well, and then all of a sudden like it just like happens in a split instant. You're like, what the crap just happened?
Yeah, I've absolutely been there.
And my left foot instantly just like numbed up. I was like, oh man. And so I was sitting there on the trail, and I flipped it. So like I fell like stomach first basically. And I say stomach first. It's like shins and knees first. And then like the rest of me fell into the trail. And so anyways, flipped over. And like I said, my left foot just like instantly numb. And it's like, oh man. And I've never broken anything in my entire life.
Knock on wood.
Like,
yeah.
And there's been many times where I probably should have, and luckily this was no different. I didn't break my foot or anything, but there's that moment where it's like, can I move my toes? And I could like kind of wiggle them a little bit. It's like, okay, so we're good there. And it's like, can I roll my ankle? And he's like, nope, not happening. And luckily, I had my trusty old Luckies on me in hand. And so I was like, all right. So I propped myself up and stood up. And I was able to flex my foot up and down essentially. So it was like perfect. And mind you, this was a 6.5 mile loop, and I was 3 miles into it basically at this point. And I knew it's like, well, I can either try to go out the rest of the way, knowing that I had that one mile climb up and then down, or I can turn around and go back the way I knew or that I just come from. It's like, well, I think I can probably make it out a little bit easier going back the route that I just came from. So I started hoofing it out of there, man. I mean, I was gimping it with my Luckies in hand, and I was probably like a quarter mile going back. And I was like, man, my left ankle finally broke loose. I think I can possibly turn around and keep running. And I took like 3 steps. I was like, nah, I need to be smart about this.
Yeah.
It's like, I know I rolled my ankle. It's not broken or anything, but I don't need to like continue trying to run on it either.
Yeah, it'd be different if it was a race setting or something like that.
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
Just, like had that end goal that you had to fix, but this was a training run. Right?
Training run, and I was trying to keep the long term in mind for this one.
I can understand that, man. I feel like we're just getting a little bit smarter as we get further into this.
Trying to
maturity coming around.
Yep, absolutely.
Well,
and yeah, man, I ended up, I think I was rocking like 25-minute miles going back to the Tahoe.
Yeah. And
it was a little bit, there's elevation going back. Like I didn't realize how much downhill there was in the direction I was heading until I had to go back the other way. And some elevation going back that way too. But without the Luckies, it probably would have taken me a lot longer.
Fair enough. Well, man, I'm glad you're okay.
Yeah.
First off.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is your first big injury, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ailment since you said high school, I think, right?
Since my senior year of high school basketball season, man. came down from a rebound. Same foot, same injury. I landed on somebody else's foot, rolled it, and popped it pretty solidly. And here we are again. How many years later is this? 11 years later, here I am.
Dude, you're getting old, man. Come on. It's okay. They just had my 10-year high school reunion. I felt pretty dang old, too.
Yeah.
Scary thoughts. But the good thing
goes by a
is,
lot faster than you think it will.
dude, it does. And then you throw kids in the equation, dude. Holy crap. Like, we're creeping up on Livy's first birthday already.
Yep.
And it's just like, where does the time go?
Gone.
But it's also, it's a proving point that I don't know, man, because I like to say we're not as young as we used to be, but also, like, man, as far as, like, recovery, bounce back, like, shape I'm in, I would kick my old, like, actually, Lane showed me a picture, my wife Lane showed me a picture of 5 years ago today.
Mm-hmm.
I was standing in the river with a Keystone light in my hand.
I know what picture you're talking about.
About 65, 70 pounds heavier.
Yeah.
Man, and... yeah, I think I bounced back a lot better than that cat would have.
Oh, absolutely.
Like that. But
absolutely.
it is, man. It's a reminder that we got to be careful out here, though, and just how fast things can change.
That's what I was gonna say. It's just a stark reminder, because, like, dude, there's so many different things, right? So it could have been a lot worse. Like, I could have literally snapped my ankle, right?
You could have.
And if I was, because the main loop is 25 miles, and there's no cell phone signal out there, right? And so if you want to play that game, it's like, how bad could it have been? Like, I could have broke an ankle or broke a leg or something like that. The park's not even technically open at that time.
Yeah.
Park rangers aren't there. And, I mean, you, like, worst case scenario, I mean, say you legitimately broke something and you're 15, 20 miles back on a trail in the hill country and you have no signal. And so it's like you have to rely on yourself. And that is something that came to mind. And I still have, like, my emergency, like, all the required gear that we had to have for Cocodona in my pack. And so it is also one of those reminders, like, you have to, like, your gear is so vital.
When it's your only lifeline like that, absolutely.
Yeah. And, you know, say I was out there 20 miles in on trail and something like that did happen, or if you're in freaking, like, grizzly country or something like that. Like,
yeah, at least we didn't have that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the situation really wasn't bad at all, but it was just a stark reminder of, like, how bad how quickly something can change,
Mm-hmm.
and how bad scenarios could be comparative to, like, what they actually are.
That's fair. I mean, yeah. I mean, the worst case scenario, what could have happened is you could fallen and I guess hit your head and woke up to, like, some raccoons eating your ankle bones or something like that. But I don't know, man. Maybe some coyotes out there chewing on your arm.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I mean, nothing legitimately bad could have happened out there in that scenario with me, right?
Yeah.
Outside of, like, a broken ankle or something.
6.5 mile loop. So eventually
It's
you would
doable.
get back.
Yeah.
And you had trekking poles on you, so you
Yeah.
had something to lean on. You didn't have to go wander out there in the wilderness and find sticks.
No, absolutely. Which I've been there too.
Yeah,
But
there you have.
but
I have to.
I say all that to say it's like it was just an easy reminder, or a very quick reminder, like, hey, the gear you take out here actually matters.
That's fair.
And it's like there are so many different variables that could have been, like, say it was nighttime and I didn't have a headlamp and I had my headlamp in my pack, like, I knew it was gonna be daylight, but, like, you never know, right? But there's so many different variables. Like, if you don't take this, you don't take that, and then you end up in a scenario where you actually need them. Well, you just screwed yourself out of surviving or helping yourself get help faster, or whatever that may look like, right? And there's so many other, like, there's so many different races and trails that you and I have talked about, or even going out and doing some solo, like adventures. And a lot of these are in some super remote areas.
Yeah.
And so then it ties into, like, you should probably have a Garmin inReach on you.
Probably.
Some stuff that not guarantees, but just about guarantees where you have some sort of communication where you can send something out for help. Worst case scenario, you know what I mean?
Maybe even consider having a firearm on you.
Yeah,
out
absolutely.
there. I mean, I don't know if Tatankas are like horses, but if I would have been with you and you would have broken your ankle,
You would have shot me or what?
No. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, like,
Take me out of my misery.
You gotta do what you gotta do, man. I don't know how that works.
But it's just like I said, it's just a quick reminder of like, hey, like your gear actually does matter.
It does matter. It's a very good point. And I do have a question. Like, moving away from your ankle, man, I had a realization this week and kind of throughout the days is like the feeling of going somewhere new. Like even like Airbnbs and things like that. I'll tell you what brought this on. My wife wants to hang up shelves, like floating shelves in the living room and do some decorative stuff. And that's not something I've ever had being a young guy in my home. I've always just thrown some random crap up on the walls, and if I even do, whenever I move from place to place in rental homes. But now that we got an actual home, we're doing some improvements and things like that.
Making it homey.
Right, making it homey. And a lot of times when you go to Airbnbs, like that's what it made me think of, because you go to Airbnb and they're all decked out and decorated. They got the floating shelves and they got all this like whenever we were in Arizona, they got like little desert themed stuff, serape stuff. You know what I mean? Like just really done up to be eccentric with the decorations almost. And that's kind of the vibe I'm getting here. But it made me think of the vibe that you get whenever you walk into a new place like that. Like I get it every time we go somewhere, especially if we go to the beach. We rent a big house or something like that. Like our family used to go to the beach every summer. And when you get there, there's just like this sense of newness and freshness and almost unknown. And it's that same kind of sense of freedom that we talked about earlier in some ways. But it's just excitement of this new and awesome endeavor that you're going to get to go on. And you have no clue what's going to happen. You just know that you're going to enjoy your time and you're going to check out at the other side. Is that something that you experienced whenever you were out there in Bandera? Because I know this was a huge change of pace and scenery and whole, like, running as a whole for weekends for most, like both of us for the past year, has been beating our feet on asphalt here in Devine, Texas. So was that something you got to experience out there?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Like on our way out there, I was telling Kendall, like, I'm so freaking excited to get out here and something different on some actual trail and just get to enjoy like everything that I actually trained for race wise. Like I'm actually getting to actually train in and on now. And it's always a good time just getting out into, like you said, just a new place, just new experiences, and just really get to take it all in. And really, like, I'm not mad about what happened or anything. I'm not mad about the trip, and I would go out there and do it 100% all over again. And I told Kendall, I mean, and I told you the same thing. I mean, it's part of the game.
It is,
and I look forward to next time I'm out there. So ain't no thing.
Well, that's really cool to hear. And though I know you're down with your ankle, I know it's going to be some downtime to recover because, man, I know you've been doing a lot of double workouts and things like that, a lot of running, and you probably give your body a little bit of time for rest and recovery that'll do it some dang good, you know?
Yeah.
I know I experienced that whenever I went through some stuff as well, rolling my ankle during training in the same kind of way, and things like that, right? And I guess stemming off of that topic of bringing up that like exciting and freedom kind of feeling of going somewhere new, I've been giving a lot of thought, and I would ask you a question here before we dive into scripture and everything else. But man, how do you transform everyday life and just the mundane crap that we get into with work, with dealing with everybody's problems, being a leader of a household or people or whatever, and finances and chores and working out and all this stuff that we have to do that we just get in these like cyclical, habitual spots where we're just doing the same thing over and over and over, and it's overwhelming, and you just get caught up in this cycle of crap. How do we capture that feeling and put it into life, like normal life? Like, how do we live the adventure outside of adventures? And I don't expect
That's
you to
a
have a
tough
clear
question.
answer, but I want you to think on that, and it's something that popped into my head, and I want to think on it too. But I mean, I'd love to hear input from anybody out there. But what are the commonalities in that feeling? Like, when do you get them? What sparks that? Right? Is it having a big goal? Is it having, like, you're working towards and the culmination of getting to that goal? Is it removing yourself and going somewhere that you're unfamiliar with and possibly uncomfortable in? Is it being able to step away from the responsibilities of worrying about and being that guy that's responsible for everybody else that works under you and everyone else that literally having the kind of jobs that we do? It's just somebody coming to you with not opportunities. I know you should look at them like that, but problems every single day.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, what is it? Getting away from that? Is it not having to worry about just the normality of life? What?
I feel like it's got to be. I mean, it's a mixture of all of those, right? It's having something that you are working towards consistently. That like a goal, obviously, right? That actually has an impact on whether it's the company or your team or your business, whatever that looks like. I mean, you gotta have something to consistently work towards. I think it's all the little things that then builds upon and leads into the success of that goal overall, right? And I think, for me personally, I know I always say it's all perspective, but it's easy to lose that perspective whenever you get caught up in the day-to-day crap. Like, it's easy to get caught up in, like, oh man, I know what they're going to be wanting at this time of the day. Or, yeah, I think it's like making a whole bunch of assumptions without taking it for what it actually is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
And so whenever you start going through and making a lot of assumptions for what it is instead of just being perceptive and open to what could be, then you start to get just caught up in the day-to-day. Oh, man, like, here we go again. And, I mean, before we started recording, we're talking about this essentially. And so it's like, how do you go through on a consistent basis and maintain that sense of adventure, that sense of purpose? And it's so easy to lose that sense of purpose if you're not enjoying what it is that you're doing, or you just start to realize the funny cycle that we are in as a society, or if you're trying to live within the social norms per se. And so I don't know, man. That's a dang good question. It's definitely something to ponder on for a while.
Yeah, and maybe that's what we need to do with that. And
I was gonna say, yeah, absolutely. Like, if you can capitalize on having that perspective of, like, the excitement and the unknown, and just knowing that it's the same feeling you get whenever you are out on trail. If you can bottle that up and put that into your daily life with work, or your daily life at home, or whatever it is that you're struggling in, like, if you can do that, then I feel like you'd be a mighty successful person in a certain perspective.
I agree with that. And I know we've talked about it in the past too, but I guess one of the commonalities in that too is it's much easier for me to get to a place of gratitude whenever I'm in those spots as well. And I think that's a key spot for me that I would want to explore more, is like, why in the world can I be thankful for everything I've got at this time, right? Whenever I'm distracted, if you will, from everything else. Like, why does it take that to get me to a point of gratification versus whenever I'm living in it every single day and everything becomes a chore rather than an opportunity. It becomes I've got to do this rather than I get to do this approach. And I think slowing down a little bit, and I think there's flipping that switch like we've talked about into gratitude is one of them that's going to be big for me in this. But I would agree with you is that if you can find a way to bottle that up and bring that approach to life and just pull those commonalities out of why you are able to shift perspective, right? And I think there's as a man, there's a certain level of control and power that goes into those situations. And it's like I'm living my life for me the way I want to live it. I'm going to make the decisions I want to make, and I'm going to have the time and the situations pop up that I want to pop up, right? And I think getting caught up in the cycle and getting caught up in just daily life with work, finances, and even family stuff. I mean, I think getting caught up in those things is a real easy way to feel like you're completely out of control, and that you feel like you're not running the show. You're not making decisions for yourself. You're being told what to do and put in a place by somebody or something that is more than you can handle in that moment and more than you can maneuver or control. And I think that's a huge factor that I've got to shift perspective on as well. And I think there's some decisions in life that are going to have to come up and some things that we're going to have to do to move towards a situation where we get that control in more aspects of our lives, like we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, I don't know. Like I said earlier, you know, what does wealth look like to you? And I know that we're ingredients in this, and that looks like freedom, like you just alluded to, freedom of your time. You get to go through. You get to choose what it is that your day consists of. You get to go do whatever, whenever you want to.
Yeah.
And it's not feeling chained down from the stupid cycle that we are in day to day. And though there could be some similarities there whenever whenever you do have that quote unquote freedom, because I don't know what that looks like. You know what I mean? And, but I mean, it's like, how do you just take up that same sense of adventure and just put it into your day-to-day life? I don't know.
And it not to go deeper down the rabbit hole, but it's weird because it's different, and I would love some perspective on this, but it's different kinds of reliance, right? Because I love being the guy that people count on. I love being the guy that everyone knows can come through for you when you need somebody to come through for you. Like as much of an old man, and I like to go to bed at 8 p.m. and enjoy my time as much as I can. I don't get to do that much anymore, but I love to slow down and just keep to myself and take, love the little things a little bit, especially my time to myself. But I'm also, more than that, at 3 a.m., if you pick up the phone and call me and tell me you're in a bind, that's where I come alive.
Yeah.
You know? And it's the dependability, it's the responsibility of those situations and being able to own it and be in control and help people. And people rely on you and you feel needed, right?
To come through in those scenarios.
Yeah, you're coming through for people. And I think it's so easy for us to forget that, that's all we're doing every day in life. It's just, we're trying to come through for people. We're trying to come through for ourselves. And it's all around. It's with our families. It's with our jobs. It's for ourselves. It's for our friends. We're living the life that we live every single day so that we can come through for others. But I do think there's a way that we can do that which doesn't bury ourselves or require us to have to go find somebody to come through for us.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Just something to chew on today.
Now it's just figuring out how to get there.
Yeah, no kidding. So
one day.
Yeah, one day. Day one or day one, isn't that the thing?
Yep.
So
So
interesting.
But other than that, man, like I said, I do really look forward to next time getting out there in Bandera. Look forward to having you join me out there.
I'm looking forward to it too.
Everything else I'll tie into that. So
yeah, I'm gonna watch your ankles for you. Make sure they're good.
There's literally a second. There's like a split second. It's like, dang, Chance would be proud of me for how I'm moving down this sucker. And then the inevitable happened.
Dude, you saw the last time we ran at Frederick, I rolled my ankle pretty good. Well, very briefly. It wasn't too bad, but I misplaced a foot and rolled up decently. Yep. So it can happen very quickly. Yeah, and I do a bit of trail running. I try to get out regularly to trails, and during the Cocodona block, I did a lot of trail running for some elevation stuff. And even with that, I mean, I'm kind of a speed demon going downhill. You know how I am, so I get it.
I'm just interested to see, like, on the recovery end, how long is it till I feel comfortable with the ankle in those scenarios again? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
I'm interested to see what that timeline looks like, because it's one thing to go through and you're able to move on it and run on it fairly comfortably, but it's another to have full faith where you can just come crashing down on the trails, like, you know what I mean? So
I do know what you mean, man. It's a much more of a mental overcoming the obstacle than the physical side.
Yeah,
at that point.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I mean, you just got back in shape. You're just healthy again to be able to run, and you don't want to risk that all over again. But it's also like, how do I progress? How do I get better if I pull the throttle
hold myself back?
Yeah,
yeah.
At that point, you might as well be hiking the trail, which still gets you time on your feet and still helps you a little bit with elevation and footing and stuff like that. But it's not.
It's not what we're there to do.
It's not what we're there to do.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
Speaking of what we're there to do, man, you want to take a dive into Matthew 19 here?
Yeah, let's check it out, man.
Yeah.
While I'm getting there, you want to kick us off?
Oh man, I would gladly kick us off, guys. We've been moving through the gospel of Jesus Christ through Matthew, and we're excited to be moving through here. We hope that you're studying with us. We would also invite y'all to dive in with Matthew 20. Throw us any perspective, throw us any comments you got, but we'll be doing 20 next week, dropping next Wednesday. So,
yeah, dude, I'm glad that you mentioned that. Actually, I had a couple people reach out and like, hey, you should mention what you are studying in chronologically so that we can tag along. So it was like, hey, we're in book Matthew right now, working on 19 and then following up on 20. So
yeah, we'll be rolling chronologically through Matthew all the way through this book and through this particular gospel. And
I think after that it'll kind of depend, because I know that we're both studying different sections.
Yeah, it might be a little harder to track that one.
But either way, I mean, on the flip side of that, if y'all are going through and studying particular sections that you want to give your perspective on too, I mean, we're all ears. So we're still new to this, we're still learning, and I just love hearing everybody's different outlooks on the same scripture that we're both reading. So
yeah. No, I agree with that, man. And we'd love to, like, if you've got something you want us to dive into and hear some perspective on. We're not professionals by any scope of that word, but
no, absolutely not.
We'd love to explore what you're exploring too. I mean, yeah. I'm excited about spending some time in Romans, some time in Isaiah. I've been working through that, and I've worked through a lot of the letters that Paul wrote in the New Testament as well. So it's been really cool, and I think there's some big takeaways I'd love to explore a little bit more. And even officiating that wedding, diving into Corinthians with some of the traditional verses, and then a couple that were less traditional, which were cool. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but for today in Matthew 19, kicking us off, man, just kind of want to dive right into it. Talks about the discussion of divorce and marriage there. And the Pharisees came to Jesus and tried to trap him. In verse 3 there, they ask him the question, should a man be allowed to divorce his wife for just any reason? And Jesus replied, haven't you read the scriptures? They recorded that from the beginning God made them male and female. And he said, this explains why a man leaves his mother, or father and mother, and is joined to his wife, and the two are united into one. Since they are no longer one, but two, are no longer two, but one. Sorry, all over the place today. Let no man split apart what God has joined together. And they go on to ask them, why did Moses say in the law that a man could give his wife a written notice of divorce and send her away? And Jesus said something that really, really struck me pretty good there in verse 8. Jesus replied, Moses permitted divorce only as a concession to your hard hearts, but it was not what God had originally intended. And I tell you this, whoever divorces his wife and marries someone else commits adultery, unless his wife has been unfaithful. So it struck me there, the clarification and the point of, like, even a higher calling of God's will outside of what you and I and everyone else would anticipate, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a threshold for what we could do and how we could live, and even in marriage right there. I mean, it talks about something higher than even that, and just the way we should hold ourselves and the standard of which God lives and upholds, and the understanding that we are humans and we are mortal and fall short, and we do have hard hearts, and we are somewhat, especially at times, incapable of being able to reach those higher standards and to live a life that mirrors that of God or Jesus. And that's very apparent in this particular chapter for me. Especially in this conversation of divorce and marriage. It goes a lot bigger than that for me.
Yeah, for sure, man. And something that I want to touch base on, and it's a little bit different side of things on this side. And they were talking about this on the 3 of 7 podcast the other day, actually. And a lot of individuals, if you're going through a tough situation like that, I mean, I can't imagine going through whatever that situation looks like, right? However, there's a lot of times where there's individuals that will read that and be like, perfect, that's my way out. Like that Jesus just said, I mean, I'm able to get out of this marriage if there's sexual immorality with no issues, right? But I think that you also owe the due diligence of still going through and trying to make things work. Like, just because it's stated like, yes, that is an option, doesn't mean that is your only option, right?
Yeah. And that's a very tricky thing to navigate as well, just because of it has a lot to do with the other person and their true intentions behind it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's something that you got to pray on and just lean on God in fully throughout that situation, just like any others. But it's not just a free ticket to get out of a bind that you literally made in front of God either.
No, it's not. And I earlier in 19, whenever he talks about divorce as well and goes into adultery, it really paints a clearer picture there, just discussing that, man and woman are brought together as one, and it is a holy unity. And honestly, like, getting a little bit just kind of out there in the open, that's something I didn't understand fully, like getting married younger and coming into that and not really having a faith, and this being more of a ceremonious traditional thing rather than like a true binding thing with God and a relationship to my wife. And whenever you look at it from that point of view and you understand it to be what it truly is, the unification of two individuals becoming one, you look at this a lot different. And I know it's really cool for me, especially too, like, I've heard my dad say it a few times as well. But it's like him and my mom would argue about things here and there, and he would always tell me that how they approached it was like, no matter what happens, like this isn't going to go down that way. Like we're together, we're figuring this out. And I really appreciated that perspective. And I didn't really understand it outside of a like almost like a hard-headedness kind of thing at times. But I do see the role that God played and faith played in that situation and with them. And it's really interesting just to understand that a little bit better and to be seeing that in this situation and how somebody like applied that to regular life, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's kind of it's like the sentiment of like it's me and you versus whatever that issue is instead of me versus you, right?
Yeah.
Because we're a team, we're going to get through whatever this issue is. And usually, it comes back to like miscommunication or like some expectations that were there that weren't communicated or just weren't understood. So you're just missing expectation. So I mean, obviously there's a lot of different variables there, but it always ties back to, hey, it's us against the issue. It's not my side versus your side.
And a beautiful picture of that is actually something I heard Jordan Peterson say on a podcast. I think it was the George Janko podcast that he was on. But he talks about like that's what we're doing. Like it's you and I versus that problem, whatever it is. Like there's no winner and loser because if one of us loses, both of us lose. If one of us wins, both of us wins, right? And what is said within that is that if one of you is better at arguing, at putting points out there and articulating what you're meaning in the conversation or disagreement that you're having between you and your wife or your wife and your husband, whoever you are, right? The person that's better should, from a place of full just transparency and for the sake of furthering the conversation, not the sake of being better or smarter or more articulate than the other person, they should help that person that's not as articulate as them, that's not as well put together in those situations that can be extremely flustering whenever you're arguing with somebody that you love. You should help that person make their point to argue against you so that it's clear, everything's defined, and everything's understood. And that's a beautiful reinforcement to me of the fact that it is two people against one problem, right? And you're trying to paint that picture so we can all understand exactly how everyone feels, what everybody's going through, and what the true solution that we want to see is. And we can work towards that together. So I just thought that was a really good point. But I think that ties really beautifully into this and the expectation set by God here and by Jesus and his teaching.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. I mean, it's hard. I mean, there's times where it's hard to keep that perspective.
Yeah.
But
it is.
But again, it comes with territory. I mean, or at least it should if you go about it in this manner, right? So.
Yeah. And in this study Bible, like not to spend much more time on that, but I think it'd be really good to point out one of the things that's laid out in this study Bible that I'd like to quote in here is, even though divorce may end the conflict a couple is having, it will not correct the attitudes or behaviors that brought about the conflict. Unless we correct the root problems, we will have the same conflicts in any future relationships. So it is really easy, especially in this like disposable society that we live in today, to throw away something like that. Right? It's just some paperwork, couple calls to lawyers. It can be a knockdown, ugly, drag-out kind of crap show, but in other places it's very easy in some situations for two people that are just tired of each other to walk away. Right? And the problem quickly becomes that there are heart problems or there's issues that people have to deal with inside of themselves, whether it's emotionally, whether it's mentally, and trauma and all these other things that if you don't address in some regard, you're going to carry those on to the next person, or you're going to just keep damaging yourself even more along the way.
Yeah. I mean, you're just going to experience the same thing over and over. And I mean, I know that we've probably seen those situations play out in front of us a few times, whether it was with ourselves, in our past, or with other individuals that we know. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
I love that point that your study Bible points out for sure. So,
Yeah. You want to take us into that next section, brother?
Yeah, dude. The little children and Jesus. Then brought little children to Jesus for him to place his hands on them and pray for them. But the disciples rebuked them. Jesus said, "Let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these." When he had placed his hands on them, he went on from there. Now, I'm not in a study Bible at the moment, but does yours say anything about why the disciples rebuked the children?
Mine does not say that per se. I had a couple of conclusions I like kind of mentally drew from it. But was there anything you were wanting to point out directly, or were you just asking me in general?
No, just genuine curiosity. I mean, is it something like, oh, like, get away from me, like you're not what I want to deal with right now type of mindset, or was it something different?
See, I think it's one of those things that, like, situationally, whenever, because you got, like, looking at just situation and context and what's going on with everybody, the fame that Jesus has rose to at this point,
very true,
and the involvement that he has, and the miracles that he's performing at this point. He's healing the blind. He's making the paralyzed walk. He's doing all these very important things. He's healed the Roman officer's son at this point, correct? And there's a few other. Didn't he raise a girl from the dead by this point already as well? So he's done all these amazing miracles and these things, and the disciples have these parents that come up and present their children that are perfectly healthy and nothing really wrong to him. And yeah, Jesus has probably been very busy. He's probably tired. He's a human. And you got all these kids and parents coming up and bothering him, essentially. I think even this version of my Bible says, but the disciples scolded the parents for bothering him. And, like, it's a situation where...
It's kind of like situation like, hey, like, we got bigger things going on right now.
Yeah, but Jesus...
Adult time, go away, kid.
Exactly, but I mean, it goes on to say, heaven belongs to those who are like these children, and he places his hands on their heads and blesses them before he left. I mean, it's a reiteration of what we've learned completely in the gospel up to this point, is approaching things with the innocence and with the mindset of children. And how clear that is, because, I mean, they haven't had the callous things of this world that have... You and I have let things in this world. Like, if we were in that time, we've let things in this world scold us. I mean, look at us right now. We're frustrated with so many different things about our lives currently, and there's certain aspects where hate creeps in and all these other different things, and these natural tendencies to observe this human world and habits that we've picked up just from living here in this corrupt and evil place. So I think it's just this beautiful reiteration, and it's an example that he uses the kids, like, no, hey, like, this is what you're supposed to be. What's more pure than this? And in effect, like, what's more important than this?
Yeah.
Right? So I think that's kind of where that was coming from.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. And then that obviously leads into, I think, the last section of this chapter. It's a shorter chapter. But this is a pretty significant section of the rich in the kingdom of God. And this is a section that we've had conversations about during our long runs and everything else. But do you want to lead us into this one?
Yeah, man. We got some time, so I'll just go ahead and run this thing through. Now, guys, I'm reading from an NLT version as well, so if this is a little bit different for y'all, I've also been reading through the New King James Version on the Bible app as well, so that's been a good change. I've liked that a little bit better than the NLT. But this section, the rich man, someone came in verse 16 there of Matthew 19. Someone came to Jesus with this question: "Teacher, what good deed must I do to have eternal life?" "Why ask me what is good?" Jesus replied. "There is only one who is good. But to answer your question, if you want to receive eternal life, keep the commandments. Which ones? The man asked. And Jesus replied, you must not murder. You must not commit adultery. You must not steal. You must not testify falsely. Honor your father and mother. Love your neighbor as yourself. I obeyed all these commandments, the young man replied. What else must I do? Jesus told him, if you want to be perfect, go and sell all your possessions, give the money to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come, follow me. But when the young man heard this, he went away sad, and he had many possessions. Then Jesus said to his disciples, I tell you the truth, it is very hard for a rich person to enter the kingdom of heaven. I'll say it again, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter the kingdom of God. The disciples were astounded. Then who in the world can be saved, they asked. Jesus looked at them intently and said, humanly speaking, it is impossible, but with God everything is possible. In verse 27, then Peter said to him, we've given up everything to follow you. What will we get? Jesus replied, I assure you that when the world is made new and the Son of Man sits upon his glorious throne, you who have been my followers will also sit on 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. And everyone who has given up houses or brothers or sisters or father or mother or children or property for my sake will receive 100 times as much in return and will inherit eternal life. But many who are greatest now will be least important then, and those who seem least important now will be greatest then.
I like that last verse of your translation. I'd like to, and same thing with you, man. I go back and forth. I read a bunch of different translations, actually. Mm-hmm. I study in New King James quite a bit. I've started reading in ESV quite a bit as well. But this Bible right here is NIT. But it says, but many who are first will be last, and many who are last will be first. But I like how yours points out, because it just puts it situationally in like context for now. It's like who we deem societally, like who is important, like probably doesn't matter. And those that just seem non-existent or non-important now are probably those that are living through like most humbly or through straight humility, and they're just not obvious to us, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So I like how yours pointed that out for sure.
I appreciate that perspective, and I do like bouncing back and forth between the versions because there's a lot of different. It can completely like the context of what's being said can completely change depending on the version of Bible you read and how it's worded and what's left out and what's put in. So I think it is important to change perspective a little bit on there and not just take the easiest route, because one of the reasons I backed away from King James is because of how hard it is for me to move through there. It takes a substantial amount of time for me to read and grasp what is actually going on in King James just because of the way it's written, which is a flaw of mine, not of the Bible, obviously. But yeah, I think this chapter is or this section of this particular chapter is very important because, like you said, it does away with a lot of the things that we depend on as a society here on earth. And even talking about the young man there, it's clear that he is somebody that has done a lot of good things, or has said he's done a lot of good things. He keeps the commandments. He doesn't murder, didn't commit adultery, doesn't steal, doesn't testify falsely, honors his father and mother, loves his neighbor as himself. But the truth beyond that is that no matter what he's done, the life he tries to lead, how good he tries to be, he has put something else above his relationship with God and the value that has and the dependency and the faith surrounding that. And I think it's an example, and we talked about this earlier, our dependency upon like the security provided by jobs, security provided by the money that we earn every single day and what that leads into. And it's such a tricky subject because just like this young man, like Jesus said, okay, if you want to be perfect, sell everything that you own, give all the money to poor, and you'll have your treasures in heaven, and come follow me. He gave him the script. He essentially told him, like, this is what you need to do, and everything will be fine. you'll get exactly what it is that you say you seek. And because of the security provided by the wealth that he has, the security provided by the money, the status, the home that he has, the family that he has, the career, all of these things that probably surround this young, wealthy man, he trades the eternal security of Christ and God for what is this worldly security. And that's such a powerful verse to me, because I get every single day.
Mm-hmm.
Every single day I find myself doing that.
Absolutely.
Like there's no in between. And I know you can't, like in the world we live in today and with the responsibilities that we have. I have a wife and I have a daughter. I can't just walk away from everything. I could, but like
there's some consequences.
There's consequences,
yeah.
Worldly consequences. It would be irresponsible for me to make a decision like that.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of things and a lot of changes that I could make to live a life that reflects that or mirrors that of Christ. And it's so tough for me, because it goes back to situations like, if it causes you to fall into sin, cut off your left hand.
Mm-hmm.
It's better to have one hand entering the kingdom of heaven than two and perish, right? And I think that's just a reiteration of that, because, man, you give all this power to all these different things, but it paints a beautiful picture. Like, I want to be successful. I want to be rich. I want to not have to worry about money.
Anything. Yeah.
I don't want to not have to worry about like my family falling short in any regard or doing without. And the truth of the matter is, I think that oftentimes I suspect money would make me a better dad. Money would make me a better husband. Money would make me a better leader, a better employee. And I think under that same guise, I fall into the thought that money would make me a better follower of Christ. But the truth is, with the dependency and the mindset I have towards money right now, it would be extremely easy for me to get so wrapped up into worshiping and idolizing that, especially if I started to become successful in that regard, while I still have it on the pedestal that I have it on, that it would blind me to all of those things, not excluding, but including a relationship with Christ as well.
Yeah.
And I think this chapter reiterates that point really, really well.
Yeah. I completely understand, man. I mean, I think that for me, this was just a reiteration of how we should actually be living day to day and the struggle that it is in doing so. I mean, and trying to live through the commandments if you can go through one day doing that, you're doing pretty dang good, right? And to do that consistently and still realize, like, if you don't have that with God or through God, I mean, you're still not getting into heaven. So you have to rely on Him. You have to have that relationship with Him in order to have that option there, or for that to be a realistic possibility, right? Or a faith-based possibility, I guess. And it still reiterates back to the fact of, like, all the stuff that we place an importance on societally or in our personal lives, whether it's your truck, whether it's your house, it's all the stuff that we deem as actually important, the status that we have. None of that crap matters. It's all the physical things that we just place such a heavy weight on And the more of it that you have, the more of it that you want, which is the tricky thing with it, because it's so easy to get wrapped up in like, oh, if only I had this, then all would be good and well. But then you get that, and then there's always that next thing that you just have to have.
And it's usually bigger,
More expensive,
and takes more time, energy, focus.
Mm-hmm. And quite the opposite is actually true. And I feel like if we were able to go through and actually get rid of a lot of these things, or just not give weight to these things that we currently do, or the same weight at least, then we'd probably find a little bit of that freedom there too. But that is so much easier said than done.
It is.
And I don't know, it's just a reiteration of how we should live. And whenever you place that importance on these things, keep in mind the fact of he said it himself, it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than it is for you to enter heaven, if that's the importance that you have on the wrong things.
Yeah.
So to me, it's just a reiteration of like, hey, it's a daily reminder of like, I still go through, I place importance on things that don't matter, or I'm consistently wanting things, I'm wanting situations to change, or I just have to have this or that or whatever it may be, because I think that would make me a better person, or my life would be that much easier, or I'm able to lead that much better, or I'm able to be that better husband, whatever that may look like, better athlete, right? And it's just it's not the case.
Healthier ankles. Sorry.
Better recovery.
Yeah, sorry. Speaking of, no, just playing. We'll talk about them in a second. Totally threw you off. Sorry.
This this section, it's easy to go through and read and take it for face value, but whenever you go through and actually apply that perspective in your life, and you just realize again just how far you have, like I have to go at least, in order to live more like Christ, to get that much closer. It's like I see all these obstacles or opportunities in front of me. It's like I need to work through that too. It's like I need to diminish those to get closer, or to become, I don't know, to like grow that relationship, I guess. And that's something that I need to work on.
Yeah.
So.
No, I get that. And man,
It's all distractions, right?
It is. It really is. And it's easy to get caught up in the, like, that's such a high standard that's painted for us too. So it's really easy to get caught up in the human aspect, like I just did a minute ago, where it's like, I can't do that. I can't just give up everything and walk away. So like, it's impossible. Like so almost to the point of why try, you know? But I love the encouragement that comes out of verse 25, where it says the disciples were astounded. Then who in the world can be saved, they asked. In verse 26, Jesus looked at them intently and said, humanly speaking, it is impossible. But with God, everything is possible. And
well, it's like with how hard-headed we are, or I am. I know you are too.
Nah.
It's like, so frequently I'm like, no, I got this.
Yeah.
Just because I've had to figure out so many things on my own. But it's taking that away, because I mean that it's literally not possible to figure it out on my own, and that'd just be such a daunting thing. It's like, all right, let me see if I can get this one knocked out. I mean, it's not just a fact of like cracking your knuckles and getting after it type of thing. It's like, no, it's not possible.
Yeah.
And I think there's many things that are possible, but obviously this one isn't. And so you have to rely on Him. You have to build that relationship. You have to actually know who He is and the plan that He has for your life, or at least have faith that there is a plan. And many times it's going to be so drastically different from what you envision for yourself. And that's probably a good thing too.
Absolutely, it's a good thing. Yeah.
because so often I find with my train of thought, like I think I can. There's days where it's like I have outlandish ideas in my mind of like what good looks like, but then God's like, nah, watch this.
Yeah.
And it's nothing close to what I could have ever imagined. And it's just with small day-to-day things. It's not my entire life plan like he already has planned out. And so then the battle becomes just going through and living that daily. And I say battle because that's what it is. It's me against myself. Because so often it's like, no, like I'm going to be selfish today. And then you lose that battle. You fall into the temptation. You fall short of whatever that sin may be. Or there's times where it's like, I want to pray for this, but it's almost an embarrassment because you know what you need to do instead of going through and actually acting upon it or living out how you should be. Does that make sense?
It does. No, it does. And I think it's very easy to get caught in the trap of that and lead yourself to a point of despair, to a point of just like lack of faith and I don't know. Especially as men, we like to roll up our sleeves and get to work, like you mentioned earlier. And
it's like the tangibility of like physical, like the physical things that we get, like the training for our running. It's like, okay, here's our plan. This is how we get there. And we go out and do it. And it's like tangibly there.
Yeah. And I think it leads into conversation too in a much bigger conversation of the fact that I think we have to go out and put our best foot forward every single day. I think we have to work hard and be diligent and roll up our sleeves and try to be everything that we can be as men. But through that, understanding that we should run our actions, our decisions, and the choices that we make through a lens of and under a microscope of, okay, is this something that moves me closer or further away from a life that mirrors that of Christ?
Absolutely.
And that's something I struggle with. And I actually, in another podcast, I heard another thing that really made me think, and it really kind of painted the picture of how much different we would live that life on a daily basis if we did that. And what they said was treat everyone like they are Jesus in disguise. And every interaction that you have in a day, treat that person like they are Jesus in disguise. And it will absolutely change the standard at which you approach things. And it'll change the lens at which you approach and treat people. So I think that's something that is extremely important and something that I would like to implement into my life a little bit better and get better about, because then it leads you on this path and ties you into a point within the gospel that actually honors, celebrates, respects, and adheres to the life of Jesus Christ.
Yeah. I like that, man. And that's something, I mean, you said it, going through and questioning yourself as to whether that's something that aligns with how we should be living. And I feel like we both probably go through, there's times of the day where we do have that consciously in front of us, but just as fleeting, that thought just disappears too.
Yeah.
Just because you get caught up in the moment or whatever that looks like. And so just having that consistently in the forefront of your mind and just trying to go through and implement that. And like you said, I mean, if you go through and implement that thought of, is like, if this was Jesus, how would I react, or put it into action with responsibilities of our day-to-day lives with work and training and everything else. I mean, we should be doing everything for Christ. I mean, how different would your day look if you actively lived that way? And maybe even then that will circle all the way back to back to the adventure piece. I mean,
That's a really great connection. I'm sure that would change the perspective of every day that we live.
So, just food for thought, man.
A lot of food for thought. And preaching to myself, last thoughts here from me for Matthew 19. And like I said, this is preaching to myself, talking to myself, but understanding how hard that's going to be and those decisions, because the worldly things are things that are so tempting and easy and comfortable and comforting, right? Versus the things that cause us to go out in discomfort and cause us to walk in a path that is not what we want to do, what we're used to, or what we're comfortable in. And the reiteration that me and the wife went to Dairy Queen last night, got us a couple blizzards. Making the choices to go do things like that is so easy, so comfortable whenever you're on a journey through fitness, right? Those are the places you want to be because it tastes good. It's a comfort food. It can be argued that it's a bonding moment with my wife, going and getting some desserts late at night and all these things, right?
Me and mine have quite a few bonding moments.
Exactly, but
for some transparency,
on the fitness journey, right? That's not conducive to the hard decisions that you need to make to get to where you're going.
Yeah.
And I think everything we've learned over the past few years in the fitness world and in the career world and in the personal development with spiritual, mental, and physical things that we've been exploring, like, this is the key to understanding that, like, God, this is going to be a mess. This is going to be hard. There's going to be a lot of decisions that are uncomfortable, that aren't what I want to do. Like, deep down, yeah, they're what you want. Everybody wants to be ripped and have a six-pack. But the process to get there involves a lot of decisions that take you into places that you're not comfortable in or that pull you away from your natural human tendency. And I think that's something that I've got to remember, that whenever I'm going through these times and I'm trying to live a life closer to that of Jesus's, or I'm trying to move away from things and habits and sins that have plagued me for a long time and stuck with me because there have been ways that I've buffered or ways that I've found comfort in tough situations, right? Whatever those are, I've got to... A lot of noises going on, sorry. I've got to take those and I've got to move away from those, right? And start making the decisions that are more conducive, that might not be what I want to do at the time, might not be comfortable, but they're where I need to go to truly reach the destination of a healthy and fit relationship with Christ.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's no growth without stepping out of your comfort zone, right? Getting uncomfortable.
Can't run 100 miles without rolling a couple ankles, baby.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, dude. I mean, it's all we can do is to go through, just try to keep that at the forefront of our mind. And I mean, there's gonna be so many days where we, I mean, daily we're gonna fail at that, but it doesn't mean to not try. So,
yeah, I agree. Well,
that's all I got for Matthew 19, dude. That's a pretty solid one.
Agreed.
Folks, again, we're going to be going through Matthew 20 this next podcast, and so please join us on that. We want to hear y'all's perspective on the Gospels and just your own journey through all of this. So please loop us in on what you get from these different chapters as well. So
yeah. Also, let us know what version you like reading. Let us know the differences, the positives, the things y'all have experienced with different versions of the Bible, and why y'all like what y'all like. We'd love to learn on that from y'all as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something I like diving into. I've listened to quite a few different things, just the different versions of Scripture, I guess, technically. And I don't know. I find it all very interesting. So,
I'd agree with you. Yeah.
but
Well, while you're on the road to recovery, we do have a recovery partner.
we do, man. Who is that?
Man, that is Access Recovery out of Conroe, Texas. If you find yourself in the greater Houston area and you are looking for some sort of athletic recovery, you got aches, you got pains, you got rolled ankles, you got whatever it is, and you're looking for a solution to make yourself feel like $1,000,000. Make yourself feel a little bit better. Maybe help the healing process just a little bit more as you're going through these struggles. I would say look no further than the two gentlemen that run the awesome business, Access Recovery. They have some state-of-the-art facilities over there. They have two knowledgeable guys that work very, very hard. In fact, one of them is 6 weeks out from Leadville, running the 100-mile race across the sky in Leadville, Colorado. Very stoked to be part of that. We'll be up there helping crew Chris Barnes doing that. But I would highly encourage you to go visit these guys that are athletes themselves. They take care of business, and they've got everything that you could need for your recovery needs. That's cold plunges. That's saunas. That's Normatec boots. That's stretching stations. That's even a bike to be able to loosen up a little bit and get yourself firing on all cylinders before you dive into that recovery. But go utilize contrast therapy. Go utilize their state-of-the-art facilities and just awesome environment that they've brought up and developed in Conroe, Texas at Access Recovery. And if you mention Next in Line sent you by, they'll give you 10% off. So there you go.
Heck yeah, man. Y'all go out there and go see him.
Yes, sir.
So, well, brother, you got anything else that you want to touch base on before we lead out with the prayer?
Man, I think that is it. All we got left is a prayer.
Cool. Well, I'll let you lead it.
10-4, it is my turn. If y'all would join us. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity to come together and to dive deeper into the book of Matthew and the story of your son and what he did for us to pay the debt that we could never repay here on earth. And God, we just thank you for the opportunity to join with those who are listening, the opportunity to have freedom to have these discussions and to work through these problems that we face in everyday society. God, we'd ask that you just open our eyes and open our ears and help us receive your message as we navigate these tougher waters. And God, we pray for those going through different situations, whether it's the storms coming in this week, whether it's life-changing events for the better or worse. We just ask that you lay your hands on them and just help guide them in a path that would help preserve them and glorify you and bring them to a relationship that's in faith and closer to you. And God, we'd ask that you stay with Mr. Divin sitting across the table from me as he works through his recovery as well with his ankle. Help heal him, get him back on the trails and in a point of confidence with these trails that he's exploring out there. It's been an enjoyable spot for us, and we thank you for the opportunity to go and run across these beautiful Texas trails. And God, we'd ask that you deliver us from evil, that you protect us from the temptations of the world, and that you'd walk and protect and look after our families as we just move through another day of life in your wonderful world. And Father, we ask all these things in Christ's name, and we love you. Amen.
Amen. I appreciate you, man.
Thank you, sir.
Folks, you know what to do. Go out there, do hard things, lead the way, and always be prepared for whatever it is.
Next in line.
Adios, folks.